All right, everyone, here we go. You know, it's the first episode of a kernel of truth here, and I wanted to start off at the bare bones, the basics, something I think is often overlooked in a lot of marketing materials. And kind of what got me thinking on this is I recently started bass fishing, and I grew up kind of fishing ponds and stuff like that, but bass fishing with a boat and things like that. And I tried to do some research, and I started looking into things and magazine articles and all this stuff on the internet, and they're talking buzz baits, spinner baits, watercolor, barometric pressure, milfoil, flipping, pitching, punching. I didn't even know how to steer the boat with my foot, on a trolling motor. So that got me thinking, there's, for the guy out there that's just trying to learn the basics, and there's a lot more bass fishermen than there is guys trying to sell grain. So, what do those resources look like? And I think guys in the industry, like myself, take that for granted. Guys that might not have access to that kind of stuff, and that's kind of where I wanted to start. Is, like I said, I think it's often overlooked, and guys kind of take it for granted that know it. Where to start. And that is, a grain price. When you make a grain contract, when you call me and get a price, what does that entail? And I just wanted to kind of break it down. And there's basically two pieces of a grain price. Your futures price, which is based off of the Chicago Board of Trades, and that trades every day. It fluctuates by the minute, as people are buying and selling. But that's the price that we relate everything back to, just so that everybody's on the same page. And it's used as a risk management tool through hedging, which we'll cover in a later section. But the Board of Trades and the futures price, it's just so that everybody is kind of playing on the same playing field as where we're starting off at. And the second part is something that I think is often the source of the most questions and maybe the most confusion out there, is a basis. And that those two combined create your cash price. But back to basis. Basis is how I explain it is, it's basically the floodgates for a local market. And what I mean by floodgates is, if I need grain, I basically open the floodgates because I need it all. So high basis. You raise your basis to basically attract grain. And as I run out of markets, run out of storage, things aren't, I don't need any more grain, I will slowly close that floodgate. And the only way to do that is to drop the basis, because in a local market I have no control of the futures. But for my organization, you have to open and close those floodgates as you need them. So those two things combined equal your cash price. And it's easier said than done on a lot of that, but I think this might help to explain a little bit. So how I like to think about it is, say you're on the schoolyard, and you got yourself a brand new Hershey's bar, and you're looking to sell it. You've got it, you don't need it, but you're looking to sell it and make some money. Now that Hershey's bar sells for $3 at Walmart, and we will consider Walmart like the Board of Trades, and we'll consider those $3 the futures. This is a long, far away land. This is Chicago. This is far away from where we're at on the schoolyard, but we'll base it off of that price. So here you are, and here's your local market out on the schoolyard. This is what I would consider your local market. Then you have your players, these guys here, and they're all going to pay a different amount for that, depending on how bad they want it, or what they can store, what they can afford, etc. So you have this guy here, and I would consider him an end user. He's a big old boy, and he certainly likes Hershey's chocolate bars. So he's out there, and he's going to pay you $5 on that Hershey's bar, and that's $2 over what Walmart sells them for, and that's going to be your basis. Your basis is essentially, if you work this backwards, $5 is your cash price minus your basis equals your futures, or vice versa. So your basis on that is going to be 2 over is what we would consider that. And I'll try and explain some of the terminology as we go along, because that's another thing too that I think is often skimmed over is, we just take it for granted because, we say it every day. And when I say we, I just mean, guys that trade in the grain industry, not necessarily the producers. And another thing that we need to remember in any industry is nothing moves for free. So anywhere that you're going to go, it's going to cost something. So to get over to the big fella here, it's going to cost you 50 cents. Now this guy here, he's not really that hungry. He doesn't have the appetite that this guy does, but he'd pay you $4 for it. And, again, this is $1 over what the futures price is. So that's what your basis would be on that. And it costs you about $0.25 to get there. Now this guy up here, he's half allergic to chocolate, doesn't really like it, but he sees an opportunity to maybe sell it to big man later, and he's got some cash floating around. But he doesn't really want it, so he'd offer you $2 on that, which the basis on that would be considered 1 under. And it costs you 75 cents to get to him. Now, there's 2 different values here that you need to consider is a delivered or a FOB or freight on buyer value here. So these FOB values work back to you. So say this guy's out here paying you $5, that FOB's back to you at $4.50 because he's going to pay that freight on that, which his freight there is 50 cents. So that's going to be $4.50 picked up at you. He's out here paying $4 with a quarter freight, so his FOB value to you is going to be $3.75. And he's paying $2, and that's going to come back to you at $1.25. So basically, those are your 2 values: is a delivered and a FOB value, or a picked up value is often referred to. And not to take a side note here, but the difference in these 2 freight values to these 2 destinations is what we consider a freight spread. So the difference between those 2, which in that case would be $0.25. As things move on, say you sell it to him, and this guy here, he's getting pretty full. So he decides that he doesn't really want to pay $5, and he's not really that hungry anymore. So he says, "Man, I don't really want another one. I need to slow that up." So he can't control that futures price, but what he can do is pay less in the local market. That's the same as dropping your basis. So if he now is going to pay $3, which is what we would consider option or even the board, his basis has gone to 0 because there is no difference now between that futures price and the price he's paying. Which now that if you fob that back, comes back to you at $2.50, this is going to be your better option now, just because he's full. And this is what kind of happens with end users during a harvest period. They'll fill up with as much as they can, and then people that want to basically take that, so grain elevators and things like that, will take that and you basically take that risk on. And while we're on the subject of risk, both of these prices have risk associated with them because they're always moving. In your local market, as people fill and empty out, this basis, it could be going up, it could be going down. And as the world market changes, your futures have that risk as well. So basically the synopsis is that throughout this process, these both have risk, and it's all in who wants to. Risk is always for sale. That who wants to buy and basically take on that risk is. Well, I kind of went on a tangent there talking about risk, but we'll get to that in a later section. So there you have it. That's what makes up a grain price, and there's a lot of different avenues we can get on from here, but this is the basics, and this basically explains what's going on a day-to-day basis intended. within the grain industry. So with that, we'll finish this one up, and in the next section we'll start to get into some of this risk and hedging and things of that nature and contract types. But for right now, thanks for joining, and look forward to the next one.